when we go to YouTube.
I like it. I like it. We're live now? I thought we were just recording. Just came up live on Facebook.
Yeah, it'll always be live on Facebook.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's Saturday morning. That means those two great guys full of information you don't want to miss. A veteran show for all veterans. Welcome Major Andrew White, retired, and Marine helicopter pilot Chuck Wright.
Hoorah! And welcome to another edition of Kilroy's Conversation. Man, we have got some knowledge bombs to drop today. We will be dropping knowledge warheads on foreheads like we do on all of our shows lately.
But
this
sit
one,
still, you're going to make everybody seasick.
you know, hey, you know, all right, you know, exciting, good.
It is a great time.
It's a great time here. You know, we're going to have a lot of fun today's show. Today's show, we're going to talk about a battle that I'd say most everyone has probably heard, but doesn't really know
the whole story.
The whole story behind it, and that is the Battle of Little Bighorn, affectionately known as Custer's Last Stand. Now, as we go and talk about this, we got to kind of paint the image of the key players in this whole battle. You have three major, you know, actors, if you will, in the scene component. You had
Errol Flynn.
Oh,
you said actor. Sorry, I was off on doing the movie. We didn't research that. I wonder how many movies there are.
Oh, there are a ton of.
This is ton, as we are fond of saying on the show.
There is a crap ton of movies about the Battle of Little Bighorn, but let's talk about the key folks there. I mean, there were several big men, but I mean, you got three main individuals.
Yep.
Sitting Bull, right?
Yep.
Crazy Horse.
Crazy Horse.
And of course, George Armstrong Custer, Lieutenant Colonel.
General.
No.
That's right. He'd lost his generalship.
And do you know the story behind his generalship?
No. Why don't you enlighten us? Drop a knowledge.
Drop a knowledge bomb. Alrighty. Custer was, and you want to talk about the greatest promotion, demotion, promotion situation in probably all of military history. Yeah. Custer was a first lieutenant getting ready to be probably court-martialed a few days before the Battle of Gettysburg. All right?
Interesting.
He was being escorted down to, I think, Meade. I can't remember who he was to meet with and probably get his hand spanked pretty hard.
Fort Meade in Maryland, north of
General George Meade. Fort Meade did not
excuse me.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So it was to meet with General Meade.
Yeah.
You screwed up. You didn't put the rank in there.
He was not such a good boy, all right? If you know anything about Custer's ego was, as they said, Top Gun, his ego was cashing checks his body couldn't afford, all right? Literally. Well, on his way
that wasn't exactly the line, but we'll keep it PG.
We'll keep PG. As he was on his way to meet with his superior, he actually came across Jeb Stuart's Confederate cavalry scout unit out there. Custer and his men. Custer. Right? What he did was they started running around in circles, kicking up all kinds of dust and noise and firing. That confused Jeb Stuart's cavalry scouts so much that they did not realize that they were just a small squadron of troops and delayed Jeb Stuart from ever reinforcing Lee at Gettysburg. And from a guy who was going to be court-martialed as the first lieutenant, quickly got promoted to the rank of brigadier general.
Wow. That's kind of a nice big jump.
Yeah, I mean, going from probably getting court-martialed, because he was court-martialed twice. People don't realize that. That was his first one. Not a bad situation, but he was what's called bereaved as general, and then he lost his rank. He became lieutenant colonel. So he was a lieutenant colonel at the time of the Battle of Little Bighorn. But, of course, he still is George Armstrong Custer, the hero of the Union and the 7th Cavalry. He was a legend. He was probably America's biggest hero at the time, marching, around with his glowing hair, which, by the way, I had the opportunity of being on the battlefield. Every day, you want to talk about a diva. Every day he would bathe his hair in vanilla and cinnamon oil to give that shine and smell. He just and those glowing locks that everyone knows, that was talk about ego. Yep. Which is a strong what?
Well, what I was going to say is, you would think a person like that, a lot of times, he's not somebody very devoted to his wife, but he was extremely devoted to his wife. She was also very attractive.
Yep.
And pictures of them, they are a very attractive couple.
Yes, they are.
And they enjoyed each other's company immensely.
And she was a very woman from a very prosperous family.
Yes.
Yep. Lots
very
of money.
Well to do.
Very well to do.
He definitely married up.
He did. And at first there was some, his father-in-law was not at first too pleased with him, marrying, but when he became famed as George Custer,
literally one of the most famous officers to come out of the Civil War.
Hands down, I would, he's right up there with Lee, Grant, as far as recognizable names.
Right.
He's definitely on the Mount Rushmore of, Civil War officers to come out of there. So
absolutely.
Anyway, he had fame, and he lived his life like a rock star, movie star.
Yes.
But, everywhere he went, he had to be, which kind of was the downfall to his ultimate demise, and we will get to that in a little bit. But in sharp contrast to the other side, you had Sitting Bull, who is the chief of the entire Sioux Nation.
Yep.
All right. Man of very few words, and he just he understood, and he knew that he wanted to bring the entire Sioux Nation together in the spot to meet, discuss how they were going to fend off the attacks of the American military. In contrast, also, you've got to look at Crazy Horse. Now, everyone, do you know the story about Crazy Horse, how he got his name? Crazy Horse isn't his real name.
What is his real name?
Curly.
I think he gave himself another name, so he wasn't named after one of the Three Stooges.
No, his name was Curly. And Crazy Horse, there is no known picture of him. He refused to have his picture taken. He said, "Why would I let you capture my image and hold it prisoner?"
Yep. They had the Indians had a very different view, not dissimilar from the Orientals, about being photographed. And actually, not just them. There's quite a few cultures on the planet who think that way.
Yep. And Crazy Horse was there's no known image of Crazy Horse anywhere. So the Crazy Horse Mountain sculpture is just designed. The reason why he was named Curly, and I've been to Crazy Horse Mountain over in right outside of Mount Rushmore, South Dakota. Curly was his Indian name. Yep. He became Crazy Horse, was what they started calling him, because he would ride his horse. Crazy was actually his father's name, which later became his brother's name. But after, when he was 13, when he won his first battle, show himself as a warrior, he took on his father's horse, which was known as Crazy Horse, and that is how he got the name, as we know him, as Crazy Horse. But his real name was Curly.
Now, we are 11 years after the end of the Civil War.
Yep.
Do you know why the 7th Cavalry was there and what was going on?
The expansion of America. We were growing as a nation. And while we kept on making treaties with the Native American Indians, we know how well those treaties have ever held up.
Yep.
Not
very well.
Not so well, a lot can be said, that, but we'll save that discussion for.
That is a discussion for another day,
Yep.
and I'm gonna do two things.
Sure.
I am going to talk about another book in my collection, not
Shocker.
autographed, but it is a first edition. Bill O'Reilly's Killing Crazy Horse, which is an excellent. And if you've not read any of the Killing series, they are excellent books. They're short reads, but they're a deep dive into the history of what is going on at whatever event. You know,
And
the book on Patton was wonderful. I've enjoyed most of them. I'm looking forward to reading Killing the Mob this summer.
Right.
His latest one. But I really was impressed with the way he handled Killing Crazy Horse, which was really interesting. But what had happened was we had basically by treaty promised what were called the Badlands in the Dakotas to the Indians. And this was considered sacred ground to them. And this became a very big issue because the problem is we found gold in the Dakotas and nobody cared about the treaty.
Yep, treaty was, what treaty?
Pretty much it. What treaty? And they sent the 7th Cavalry in. The Indians had basically been pushed about as far as they wanted to be pushed.
And that is where they made their last stand.
Pretty much was their last stand, although they wound up winning that one.
Well, they won that one, but that was the last victory they had because a lot of it had to do with who they had killed. If they had killed virtually any other military officer, I don't think America would have uprised as much as they did, but the fact that they killed Custer. He was a legend. I mean, comic books written about him, stories. You could not be in America and not know who he was.
Yeah, I don't think
which
anybody
also
doesn't
played
know who Custer was.
Significant fact of his demise. His wife had a supposed legend has it she had a deep concern that he would be too recognizable. So before he went off on that mission, she had him shave his head. That was the only battle that he did not have as glowing. So this image of Custer, which you see in the middle, as you see in the middle of the screen, is maybe not entirely accurate as far as it does have his hair shorter, but he was told to shave his head by his wife because she feared that he would be too easily recognized by the Indians.
We're back to Samson and Delilah.
Yep.
They cut off Samson's hair and he lost all of his power.
And that could have been it. But it was also needed because Calhoun, the general at the time, you got to understand the whole situation. As the 7th Cavalry is moving up, Calhoun was 3 days away, traveling, and keep in mind, everyone's going on horseback and foot. Custer got there faster. And Custer and Calhoun, there was a lot of ego going on over there. Shocker.
Yes.
And Custer knew that, or believed, shouldn't say knew, believed that if he waited for Calhoun, Calhoun would have gotten the credit for defeating the Indians at the Battle of Little Bighorn, which technically probably would have still resulted in a complete total disaster because of the numbers. The U.S. military thought they were going to catch the Indian Sioux Nation surprise, asleep, and grossly undermanned compared to the U.S. military. Custer showed up with a force of about 600 to 700 troops. Sitting Bull had 2,500 warriors. Just warriors alone.
Right.
And remember, in that culture, women fought too.
Yep.
And young braves. So the true number of how many they really faced was overwhelming odds. If Calhoun was there, it maybe would have brought up the number to about 1,000 more troops. They still would have been grossly outnumbered. Not only that, but at this point in time, Sioux Nation had already captured many repeating rifles.
Hundreds of Winchester. You went exactly where I was going to go.
I knew you were going there.
Yeah. They had hundreds of Winchester rifles.
Yep.
Now, one of the things, and I believe we talked about on the air when we were talking about Teddy Roosevelt's Medal of Honor worthy charge up San Juan Hill.
What hill did he What hill did he charge?
Kettle Hill.
Exactly.
But one of the things that I discovered, and I'm not sure if we talked about it on the air or I saw it somewhere else, one of the reasons that the Army wanted to use basically single-shot Sharps rifles was because they were afraid that soldiers would waste ammunition with a repeating rifle. And I thought about that, and I was like, that is just the kind of decision that some bean-counting bureaucrat in the Army would make, and God only knows Marines have made similarly stupid decisions. We can always fall back on the fact that we don't have enough money. But this would become significant in several of the things we've talked about. And one of the things we'll talk about more in one of our future shows will be the rise of the Texas Rangers.
Right.
And interestingly enough, they were successful against the Indians because they figured out, in fact, eventually Samuel Walker, who is one of the most famous Rangers, would go back to Samuel Colt, and he would correct a lot of the problems with the original 5-shot Colt and take it from a 36 caliber to a 44. But the Samuel Walker Colt was actually an 8-pound pistol. It's quite heavy.
Oh, yeah.
I've held a replica of one. But that tactical, technical issue would literally be one of the, forget the fact that you're outnumbered.
Yep.
You're outgunned.
Outgunned, and you were fighting on their home turf.
Yep.
So if you think about it, everything that could go wrong in a battlefield plan went wrong. I mean, you were fighting on the enemy's turf, outnumbered, outgunned, and they know the terrain better than you do.
Yep.
And more importantly, they were prepared.
Yes.
So how the battle all unfolded was on the 25th and the 26th. Really the 26th was, they had already been discovered. The Indians knew the land. They saw Custer coming miles and miles away.
Yep.
And I've been out there. It's vast open area. And keep in mind, the Americans call it the Battle of Little Bighorn. You know what the Indians call it?
I do not.
The Battle of the Greasy Grass. That's just what they call the land over there. I'm sure it's probably a translation in there, but it is the Battle of the Greasy Grass. And it's a huge battlefield, very wide open. I mean, there's really nowhere to hide.
Right.
It is an open plain area. Been out there, beautiful scenery, and there's still to this day wild horses running all over the place over there. It's really cool. If you ever want to go check out a battlefield, that is definitely a interesting one. You can spend hours out there.
Wow.
So anyway, the battle took place, in the early morning times. Major Reno took his first unit, and Custer believed he split them up where Reno was going to come in from the flank side and attack where all the villagers and the women and children are. He figured if he overwhelmed the women and children, the rest would just surrender. And that was a poor calculated mistake. All you did was stir up the hornet's nest.
Yep.
And Reno and his men were instantly the reports come back roughly within about 45 minutes after the first shot. Reno's entire unit was annihilated.
Wow.
In about a 45-minute period, gone. Custer got reports that send men now or we're going to be gone. Well, Custer still did not believe that he had, how could Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull outsmart the great General George Custer, Lieutenant Colonel George Custer, whatever his rank was in his own mind? Did not believe it.
Sometimes you're better off not reading your own press clippings.
Yep. Well, he took the remainder of his forces and went down. Now, of course, there are some, because Benavita, the other American major over there, him and Custer did not get along. He was his quartermaster.
Yep.
And he stayed back behind the ridge. And when he got reports that they needed more ammo, he's like, supposedly, he said he never got the message. Who knows? I don't think if he went there, he would have really made that much of a difference in regards to the outcome of the war. Maybe would have lasted a little bit longer, but at the end, it was not a good thing. But so the whole battle took really about an hour and a half.
Right.
You know, Custer and his men did not understand what happened. You know, and it was just overwhelming odds. So
Cool.
we're here at the battlefield. We're back. And Custer, again, ego.
Lots of egos.
Lots of egos in
Lots
here.
of egos. Not a lot of communication, not a lot of coordination.
And communication, to keep in mind then, was sending a runner.
Yes.
Literally a runner.
Yep.
Through there. Now, keep in mind, these are steep hills over there. Big wide open plains, steep hills. And as you can see the battle over there, where it's located. JP, I don't know if you can go down more and pick up, but the battlefield, all right, as you can see where the cavalry was in these pictures. You know, it kind of depicts how the battle.
Just pull one of them up.
Just pull one of them up. All right.
Here we go. Perfect.
The battlefield was spread over, I believe it's about a 5-mile terrain. Over by the creek and the riverbed, that's where Reno and his men attacked. And that's where they got wiped out. And you see the Greasy Grass river over there.
Greasy Grass is on the bottom right.
Right. That is where Reno, as you can see, where the first part of the wave where he went in over there, that happened in the early morning hours. Annihilated. Custer heard the shot and he couldn't understand how, once the firing stopped, he at first thought that Reno had won.
Prevailed. Yeah.
Because 45 minutes, no more gunfire. Victory is us. Unbeknownst to him, how many repeating arm rifles and bow and arrows and spears and knives and Indians and tomahawks and everything else you can imagine, the Indians had at their disposal. You know, the Sioux were hardened warriors. And underneath the Sioux, you had the Lakotas, which were Crazy Horse. That was his, or affectionately known as Curly. You know?
Sorry, a little Three Stooges.
Hey, that's okay, you know.
Gaff there.
Curly's great. And I will tell you right now, if you ever get an opportunity to go to Crazy Horse Mountain in South Dakota and see the history of the Native American Indians and the Sioux Nation over there, wow. Unbelievable. It is just first class all the way. So, no one really knows which Indian led the charge against Reno. It is suspected that that was Crazy Horse and Lakotas. Just their nature, you know, they would just jump on the horses and just
go.
Just go. Also unknown whether it was not Crazy Horse and his men that finally took out Custer. Remember, because Crazy Horse did not believe in credit. He did not want, you know, every warrior was a warrior in his eyes. He was, you want to talk about probably the most selfless, you know, he did not care about himself at all. You know, he was just like, we got a job to do.
And one of the things that I had mentioned killing Crazy Horse earlier, one of the things Bill O'Reilly does a really good job of is talking about the leadership and the selflessness of the Indian leaders. And they were in many ways to be admired, but they were also, you know, let's not mix words. They were brutal savages.
Yeah.
You know, it was, they talked about it at the Alamo. They played DeGuayo. And DeGuayo is no quarter. They gave no quarter. And
that was just their belief, you know, that's how it was. And You can look at it in many different ways. I've over the years learned to really respect, after spending many times in, South Dakota and visiting and seeing I've earned a very healthy respect for the Native American Indians, the Sioux, the Lakota, how they operate for them as a military force. And you have to look at them as a military force because they were.
They very much were. But let's go on another little bit of a tangent.
Yep.
And I'm going to talk about Eric Reiches. It's not Eric Reiches, excuse me. Sebastian, and I can't think of his first name, wrote another small book. It's me. I like small books.
Right.
Don't give me...
Because your library is only so big.
It's only so big. I've only got so much space, so the little books fit in better than the big books. It's driving me nuts. I can't remember his first name, but Sebastian wrote a great book called Tribes. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the culture of the Indians for just a second, because it's very interesting. One of the things they love to do, especially with younger kids, is they love to capture them and turn them into members of their tribe.
Yep.
Now, it's not unusual. Those kids would be brutalized in multiple ways. They were pretty sick individuals. But what was really interesting, and Sebastian talked about it in his book, and it's the culture that we have, that tribal culture. That a friend of ours today just changed the name of his organization to the One Tribe Foundation, which is how we talk about veterans as being one tribe. But it was amazing how many of these Anglos that would eventually be rescued never fit back into quote unquote white society.
Yep.
Strong, as you were talking about, loyalty to the families, outstanding leadership, and you were leading warriors. There wasn't a formal rank structure.
No.
It was possible for people to challenge for leadership. So leadership was a lot more fluid in an Indian community, but a lot of it was also based on internal respect. Obviously, they didn't respect anybody else. And the tribes, the Lakotas and the Sioux, at one point had been staunch adversaries.
Right.
So them coming together in many ways signaled the tribes in America continue to get pushed further and further west.
And that is where someone depicted over here. I've got the two flags of, you've got the Sioux Nation, all the nations fall under on one side, and of course the famous Seventh Cav flag.
Yep.
But yeah, you are 100% correct on that. Leadership, there was no rank. No, how many, and what we depict as, the big mane feathers and all that, that was just for show.
Yep. That was ceremonial.
No one
fought that one.
Yeah. They went in there, did they have their war paint and all that to a certain degree, but it was more of a religious aspect of it from them going in by painting their horses, where they had already made peace with their warrior spirit to go in there so they'd have a good fight.
Yes.
Totally different than, but you're right. They looked at each other based off your actions, we will follow you.
Right.
It was not what's on your shoulder boards or on your collar.
Right.
It was what your history has told us.
Right.
And at a young age of 13 is when Crazy Horse, Curly, earned his, supreme, leadership as they recognize.
And we think of today, 13 years old being extremely young, and it is, but keep in mind, at that point,
life expectancies
might have been 40. It was not long.
Yep.
I have a question.
Yes.
Oh, okay. We weren't quite sure what this signal was.
Heart attack. Go get me, Esther. Or whatever her name was. Eunice. No. My question is, okay, so you've got a picture, right?
Right.
Yep.
So he's a warrior, clearly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you know what the regalia is on him and what it indicates to his tribe?
I know what some of the regalia is on there. The Indians, and it was depicted very much in Dances with Wolves as well, is the Indians, or I hate to use the word, Native Americans, when
Indians didn't bother them.
When they found something in the battlefield, they collected it.
Yeah.
It became theirs. Yeah. And in this picture, he's wearing clearly a Union uniform, probably something he took off of the remains of a dead soldier. Being that he's got shoulder boards on there, it was a dead officer. And the various different, artifacts with the bones and all that, probably he got from tribal hunts that he used to significant some fight. I know the neck collar, they told different family stories. A lot of what they wore told stories of their lineage and their past.
Oh, interesting.
It was very much,
so let's do another tangent.
Yes.
Kenesha brought up, and we call them Native Americans. Do we call them Indians? So I found this out.
Mm-hmm.
When George Marshall bought the Washington Redskins.
Right.
And moved them to Washington. I'm not sure where they were. He created a team. However he did it, he named them Redskins. Do you know why?
I don't.
Their first coach was a Native American, and they wanted to honor him.
I did know about the honor aspect. I did not, and not to go way off the subject, but we'll go back to our hero of the day, if you will, Custer. Not really a hero,
up over here yet.
But for years, I remember growing up here and people say, "Oh, we need to change the name of the Redskins and all that." Well, the overwhelming majority of Native American Indians
didn't want them to change.
Could care less.
Yeah.
Could absolutely
Doesn't bother them at all.
Care less. Did not affect.
In fact, a lot of them actually liked the fact they were getting a little bit of recognition.
Exactly.
And it's, of course, now, since we've gone off on that tangent, and I'm sorry I didn't bring up the old American Express commercial with Tom Landry dressed up as a real-life cowboy walking into a saloon and running into 5 Washington Redskins in full football uniform. And it was actually pretty funny because Tom Landry was known for being very stoic and not being very funny.
Yeah, exactly.
He was not a glib kind of guy.
That is definitely not the image that most people think of.
But it was one of the better, back when they were doing the American Express commercials, one of the better ones. So back to the man of the hour.
The man of the hour. Now, you got to understand a couple things about him also. Much like the Native American Indian Sioux Nation, they fought the family. Do you realize in this battle how much family Custer had in this battle?
I know he had some.
Custer, in this battle, not only was he killed, but he had 2 of his brothers, a nephew and his brother-in-law, all killed.
Wow.
All by his side.
Man.
That's a bad day for the Custer clan.
That's a bad day for the family.
It's
a real bad day for the family.
And I know we go on the numbers here, but U.S. casualties or cavalry casualties, 268. Casualties in the Sioux Nation, reports because they didn't range anywhere from 31 to 135. No one really knows the true number because obviously they picked up their own.
So if we only lost 200 and change,
right?
What happened to the other 600 or 700? Because we're 600 or 700
That's where Benetine comes in.
Benetine. You're going to have to start throwing ranks in here.
Major Benetine. He was, remember I told you
he was the quartermaster?
He was the quartermaster.
Yeah.
Supposedly him and Reno ran off.
Thought Reno was wiped out.
No, he was the only one that survived.
Oh.
He ran off. Now remember, to their death day, they were blamed for being cowards and traitors, and they were court-martialed. They were ultimately never found guilty of, fleeing, desertion. But they said those stories haunted them to the day they died.
Oh, I'm sure they did.
Of what it is. Neither man cared for Custer very much.
Right.
They hated him. And so did Calhoun as well.
Right.
Calhoun never made it to the battle. He was about 2 days late. When they saw, and there's proof that came back, there was actually I believe they have tornadoes up there. Yeah, I was going to say, one of the hurricanes, tornado.
Yep.
A few years ago, I don't remember the year it happened, but it unearthed a lot of the bullets and remnants and
Right.
artifacts. And some archaeological forensic team went out there and they showed proof that many of the 7th Cavalry men were actually running from the battlefield through the forensic evidence of how it was left from where the battle was. So, yeah, Custer and 268 men lost their lives. And what happened later on is there were markers, like I made sure they put this marker that we have out there, all of the battlefields where they found bodies and left
Right.
them there.
Yep.
But when you go to Last Stand Hill, there, that's the famous last ground where Custer and all of his men were finally shot down. And to use the line from the movie 300, they did fight in the shade at the very end. There is Last
There we
Stand
go.
Hill. And if you notice, there is one tombstone with a black,
Kind of right in the center.
Right in the center?
Bottom center.
that is where Custer fell.
Wow.
They identified later all them. The far corner, all the way down by the pass, if you look at it, that is where 2 of his nephews fell over there. They're side by side. And a little farther down was some contractors that we had hired out there for the event to record and write the story of Custer, because Custer did not go anywhere without his press clippings.
Oh,
And
no. He had to have his press clippings.
they were there. Now,
So, Michelle, if you're listening to this one, this is in the southern part of Montana. It's not far from Billings. We will be making the trip.
yeah, I will tell you, and I can recommend some great places in Billings to
We'll-
go.
We'll talk about that.
And it is now also here's the thing you may not notice. To the far back, I know we can't zoom in on it, but that is a U.S. modern military cemetery way in the. I don't know, JP, if you can zoom in
There
that
we
far
go.
corner over there. And I do not remember the name. I have a picture of it on my phone. I'll have to
Right.
find it. There are 2 Medal of Honor recipients laid to rest out there.
Wow.
It's very cool. It's a small battlefield cemetery, but it is very, very neat, beautifully kept up, unbelievable setup over there. But over there in the distance, they have that
Okay,
cemetery.
Michelle, these are 2 cemeteries we will, in fact, visit.
And it is great.
wife
You can
loves
walk
cemeteries.
it or you can drive. I highly recommend the drive because there are some very steep hills you are climbing up and down.
Wow.
Up and down on. And not only that, but there are rattlesnakes out there.
There are rattlesnakes.
Yep. So to go back to, and in fact, in the lower corner, you see Custer's tombstone over there. But here's the thing with Custer. After the battle's over, and of course, like we talked about, JP brought up a great question where the Sioux and the Lakota would take, what they wanted from the fallen. Yes, JP. Oh, 1 minute.
1 minute.
Well, I'll go into. They stripped them of everything. There was nothing but naked bodies left on the battlefield when it was all said and done. They take their gold and all that. But when we get back, do you know how Custer's body was treated by the Native Americans?
No.
We will talk about that when we return in
Yep.
just a moment. And are we? We didn't go there. We didn't go. We're back. I thought we had a quick pause. But 38 minutes. All righty. We're going to talk about now Custer. Here is, like I said, they fought in the shade on their last stand. All right. Literally, the amount of bullet holes and arrows that was launched at these
So for
men.
anybody who hasn't seen 300, I feel like we need to explain that. The Persians basically said they would fill the sky with arrows.
and it'd block out the sun. And the Spartans replied back, well, I guess that means we will fight in the shade. And that is literally almost exactly what happened to Custer and his men at the last
Right.
stand hill.
But you were talking about how the Indians treated the
Yep.
body of Custer.
Well, Custer was part of the treaties in Oklahoma. He was one of the representatives over there. And he made promises.
Actually stationed at Texas at one point in time after the Civil War.
Yes. He was negotiating the terms, of course, terms that he broke. Well, not himself, but
Right.
the mayor. Well, the Native Americans told him then, stay by your word or we will come back and haunt you. Well, at that battlefield, after he was killed, two of the scout Indians were actually at the table with Custer
Interesting.
when he made those terms and agreed to it. Well, they at first didn't recognize him because, like I said, he had his hair cut.
Right.
But then one of the looked at him and was like, that's Custer. And what they did was Custer. What they did, and this is, the other bodies they just stripped and all that, but Custer, no. They took a arrow spike and shoved it up places you don't want it necessarily shoved up, and also dismembered his male members. But at the end, what they did was they took two, what do you call them, knitting shears? Don't know how they had them or why they had them. And they shoved them in each ear. And the words they said to him is, we hope you hear better in the afterlife now. That is a story that all Native Americans say is that they, by putting those in Custer's ears, they hope that he could hear better their words of what they wanted in the afterlife.
So continue the story. Tell us about what happens to Crazy Horse.
Well, Crazy Horse,
Sitting Bull.
Sitting Bull was ultimately killed in a battle years later. I don't remember which battle was it he was in, but he continued to fight on the Plains Wars. This was also the last victory the Sioux Nation would have against the U.S. Cavalry. U.S. Cavalry at this point was up in arms. America said, no, we need to get rid of all these Indians at all costs because we lost Custer. Well, Crazy Horse was later captured in a battle and brought down to Lincoln, Nebraska, where he was taken as a re-education camp, I guess they called him. I don't know the exact terminology, but basically where he had to somewhat admit that, yep, we were wrong and Indian way is bad. We need to conform to the white man way. And he never did that. Now, the story goes, what the official report is, that while being transported from his cell to go strike some type of bargain, Crazy Horse lashed out at one of his prison guards and was then shot. That is the official report of what happened to Crazy Horse. Many eyewitnesses.
What did he do to the Clintons? Oh, I'm sorry. That was a political comment.
In actuality, one of the Native Americans that was captured along there brokered a deal because he was from an opposing tribe, and he actually shot Crazy Horse in return for what he thought would be lands and riches for him and his family's tribe. Of course, that didn't happen. Now, here's the thing with Crazy Horse. When his body was returned to his family, no marker was ever left of where he's buried. He is buried somewhere in the southwestern portion of South Dakota, over by a river creek. That is all that is known of his last known burial.
Interesting.
His family did not want a scene for people to come and see it. And there is the Crazy Horse, which is amazing. And when this thing is ultimately done, it probably will not be finished in mine or your lifetime. This is all being done by private donations. The same architect family that did Mount Rushmore is making this. In fact, we're coming up, the gentleman, Boldrum, who makes this family, his birthday is on the 25th. Same day as the Battle of Little Bighorn. And they do a thing, and this is something that is super cool to go and check out. If you can. They do what's called Fire on the Mountain. Every night, they do a laser show up on Crazy Horse Mountain depicting the Native American story. With the exception of the 25th of June and the 6th of September, because that's Boredom's wife's birthday. They've never reenact the same fire story twice, but the entire mountain, they use explosives to make the entire mountain look like it's on flames in different fire sequences.
Wow.
It is the coolest. If you want to take Michelle out to something super special, June 25th, September 6th. Remember those dates. It is the most impressive thing. JP, I don't know if you get a chance. If you see if you can pull up something, Fire on the Mountain, because they got some images of this. The coolest thing you'll ever see in tribute to Crazy Horse is on when they do that. It's just unbelievable. But the laser show is amazing. Crazy Horse Memorial Mountain is so large that once it's finished with his hand stretched out over the horse, Mount Rushmore will fit perfectly underneath his arm and inside that space. That gives you an idea. And these mountains are about 13 miles apart, and you can see through that little hole in there Mount Rushmore.
Wow. Very cool.
This thing is Fire them out. They do this all through charges with a laser light show and music. I will tell you right now, there is nothing cooler than going out there to see this. It is hands down one of my favorite places to visit. And like I said, every time they do it, the charges are different.
Wow.
It is very, very, very cool. Highly recommend. Sorry, September 13th, not the 6th. I apologize. But it is amazing to go check that out. Highly put on there. But
of course, the problem is you keep looking back at this
I know. I can't help it. It's really cool.
It is.
It's a really cool thing to check out.
But our guests couldn't see it.
Well, they can see it now. Now they can. They can see.
Now they can see Fire on a Mountain.
Fire the Mountain.
I got stuck in his passion, and I'm looking at the big screen too, and I'm like, wait a minute.
See, as you all
I gotta
know,
move this
so
over.
hard to get decent help anymore.
I know.
Well, you know
but-
what's funny is I've been there and seen this.
Oh, really?
And-
You've seen Fire the Mountain?
Yes, and I mean, I'm with Andrew. This is one of those things you got to see. What's funny is I went for Mount Rushmore,
Yep.
and then this became hey, you need to go by and see this if
Right.
you dig history. And I did. They have a whole facility there.
Oh, it's amazing.
I mean, a whole museum. They have artifacts everywhere. I mean, and it is all by donations, and it's all privately run.
Yep.
So way cool.
Way cool. Not only that, but I don't know if you had it when we were up there, although you may not have had it. Did you ever have a Crazy Horse taco?
No, we didn't. I didn't eat there. We drove on.
Oh, let me tell you, Chuck, Michelle, I got to tell you, have to let Chuck have one of these. Don't know if you can eat the full one of these, but you know what? You're going to try. Crazy Horse tacos. That was Crazy Horse's favorite thing is these Native American tacos. They're made with this deep dough taco shell that is sweet. It is unreal. I'm telling you, the taco is like the size of my iPad.
Wow.
It's huge, but it is awesome. These beef tacos, that was Crazy Horse big thing. You got to go. The food at the Crazy Horse Mountain, first class all the way. See, this show, not only do we tell you a little bit about history, but we give you some great places to go and check out here in America.
Indeed.
Let me tell you, that part of the country, like I said, as we all know, I am a huge Texas fan. I will never leave the state of Texas other than visit others. I love it here. But if there was ever a place I would consider as a second option or summer home, southwestern South Dakota. It is pretty cool. Not only that, we got Mount Rushmore, which that in of itself is awesome. Got to check it.
On the bucket list.
On there. Tried going this year for 4th of July because they open up, but ticket only, even though it's open public. Yeah, I couldn't get anywhere near. I tried doing it. But it's pretty awesome. The Black Hill Mountains, and you see all the Indian history out there, Native American history. Amazing. And not only that, but the cool thing is you can bring home part of Crazy Horse Mountain, the rocks. Every day they bring home rocks after they blasted it. You can grab them for free and bring them home.
There you go.
Yep.
We can go get rocks.
You can go get rocks.
And I can get rocks right here in Texas.
But not like that. Those are the
There we go.
Crazy,
The Crazy Horse Saloon.
Yep. Those
like
tacos are huge, and they are good too. When I was at, in fact, JP, we've talked about this in one of our future shows. We are going to go to Sturgis for the motorcycle rally because we get to see, remember the RV going up there. Ellsworth Air Force Base has the flyovers every morning by a different bomber. I was there when the B-1 flew over. Pretty cool.
I was in the Rose Bowl when a B-1 flew over.
Oh, that's
But the sun had already set. You couldn't see the damn thing. You could hear it.
Oh, yeah.
You literally couldn't see it.
At around 9 in the morning, you could see it. We're good on time. So we're going to talk.
Oh, we're at 50 minutes.
50 minutes.
I thought we
All
were
right.
going to 45.
But anyways.
We should probably use this as a good point to wrap up.
Exactly.
As we kind of reformatting the show just a little bit.
Yep.
But it was interesting. We were talking about it off the air before the show. So many of our famous battles were massive defeats. And next week, we're going to talk about another one, on our 4th of July show, but we're going to talk about the battle at Bunker Hill.
Yep. Another great, which technically was a loss, but a moral victory.
As was the Alamo. As was
in
Custer's
a way,
Last Stand.
Custer's Last Stand, yeah. A lot of similarities in that.
Yeah, so we have made famous some of our greatest defeats.
Yep. Well, on that note, we are going to sign off, but stay tuned because we got some great 4th of July stuff coming up next week.
Oh, it's going to be a fun show. It's going to be a very
Absolutely.
fun show. And we hope you enjoyed this week's Warheads on Foreheads.
Which, by the way, Alamos Air Force Base, that is their battles.
Really?
Yep.
There we go.
That's where I stole it from. And I'll admit, I stole it from them. So,
Hey, all of
anyways,
my jokes are stolen, so I don't feel bad.
Exactly. So, see you all next week. Hoorah and hoorah. Take care.